Hi, welcome back to Anything is Possible. I'm Tamara and I live on the shores of Lake Chapala in Jalisco, Mexico. And this particular program, I was planning on covering utilities. And once I started putting together my notes, I realized there's no way I can fit all of this into one 20-minute program. I try and keep it 20 minutes just because I think a lot of people have had enough after 20 minutes. So I'm just going to cover today water and electricity, and then I'll cover everything else, gas, sewer, the postal system, everything else like that in another upcoming program. To start, I just wanted to say that pretty well known that tap water here is not supposed to be consumed. You don't want to get any of it in your mouth, actually. You use bottled water or filtered water for anything that would be consumable, brushing teeth, cooking, washing vegetables, anything like that. A lot of Mexico still doesn't even have piped water. So the big cities obviously are much more advanced, but a huge amount of territory in Mexico doesn't even have piped water. So we feel fortunate that if we have piped water, it's up to us to figure out how we're going to go about filtering it and purifying it for our own use. So actual large-scale water treatment plants are also virtually non-existent. There's no postal system here. The way I get my water bill, it's just slipped underneath my gate. Somebody comes by and slips a little piece of paper under my gate to tell me how much my bill is going to be, and I have to go to the water office. There is no online paying or paying through an OXXO station or anything like that. You have to actually go to the place and pay cash. It's not a huge hardship because mine is never exceeded $10. It never even gets close. So water is very affordable here. I can't complain about it. It's just they aren't quite up to snuff in terms of technology, in terms of paying online. My water here is just pumped directly from a line in the street, which probably hasn't been maintained for a long time because the street itself is decayed terribly. It gets pumped in from the street. I have a pressure tank, and there's a basic filter that just filters out sediment. I have to wash that every couple of weeks or so. I rinse it off with a hose and put it back in, and it gets rid of the large particulates. The water here is very hard, by the way, and it pumps water then into the house. So that is the way that works. A lot of people have holding tanks, which is a really good idea. There's two different kinds. There's one is called a tinaco, and it's on the roof. And then there's also what they call, and they are underground. The best kind, really, I think, is probably the tinaco because it is on the roof. And if the power goes out, you've already pumped water into that tank, and with the gravity feed, you'll still be able to use at least the water that's in that tank, the holding tank. If you have it in aljibe, it's underground, and it would require power to pump it up into the house. So those are the two storage tanks. You see these tinacos all over people's roofs throughout town. If you ever get up to see an aerial view, you'll see a lot of these large tanks. Purified bottled water is really the cheapest way to get water if you don't have a filtration system. You can buy dispensers. I have one that's just a gravity feed one. There's also ones that are pumps that you actually stick into the bottle, and you can pump directly from these big 20-liter bottles, which weigh quite a lot, but you can get trucks come by that deliver water, and they will bring it into your house and set it up. You can also just buy the bottles, and that's what I do, because I find it hard enough to be here for the gardener, and if I have to be here for somebody delivering water, it's just one more thing that makes me stay home and wait for somebody who may or may not show up at a particular time. So I just prefer doing it on my own. There's a little market just a block away that I can walk to and get the smaller bottles, and otherwise I just drive to, and almost all the markets carry these big garrafons, they call them, of water. Let's see, the different brands here, at least in this area, are Epura, which used to be Santorini, and now it's actually called Epura. And there's CL, which is Ciel, is CIEL, and both of those are owned by Coca-Cola. And then there's Bonafide, which is owned by Danone, which is another international corporation, but basically they're the company that makes Danone yogurt. Those are the main big brands here that are available, and then there's some private filtration companies. The nearest one to me just went out of business. I usually buy Bonafide because my rationale in that, seeing as how none of them on their websites are open about how pure their water is, or what they filter for, or where their water is coming from. I just figured that Coca-Cola has never really cared about people's health, and I'd rather buy from a company that makes yogurt than a company that makes Coca-Cola. It's probably a very lame argument, but anyway. Bottled water is not expensive. One of the large 20-liter bottles of Bonafide at my local little abarrote or grocery store costs 40 pesos. It lasts me about 3 days. Then that's with the animals. So I find that's pretty affordable, really. I actually use tap water for washing dishes, for doing laundry, for showering. And when I wash my fruits and veggies, there is an iodine solution that you can buy in most produce sections or produce stores around, that you fill up a big of water and put your vegetables and fruits in there and let it soak for 15 minutes. And the iodine kills anything that is on the fruits or veggies or in the water as well. So I feel tap water is safe as long as I do the iodine solution. For renters like me, with houses that don't have any filtration, or for low-income people, bottled water is really the only reasonable way to filter your water, since household filtration systems are a few $100s to a few thousand for whole house systems, and that's not something I feel like installing in a temporary situation like a rental. And for low-income people, it's just simply not an option at all. So I thought I should bring up also that in addition to just the quality of the bottled water, which we know for a long time that bottled water is not regulated, and there really is no way to know what the quality of the water is. But bottled water industry in general is pretty dirty business. Nestle for a long time has been in the business of bottling water, and they have been known all over the world for taking over the land and water from indigenous people and taking over their water rights, and then forcing them to buy water back to meet their needs in areas where they always were able to conduct their own business and water their crops and live their lives using the water that's on their land. And that has happened also with Bonafide and Coca-Cola here in Mexico. And Coca-Cola takes the water from wells around volcanoes in Mexico, and Bonifant did as well. In Puebla, Mexico, Bonifant had been taking water for 20 years from a volcano, and at the beginning it wasn't too bad, and then they just started taking more and more and more until the people that were the local people in that area, their wells were running dry, the streams were running dry, the wildlife was suffering. They didn't have enough water to survive. And then COVID hit. And, you know, Mexico is the largest consumer of bottled water in the world. And it turns out that, you know, during COVID, everybody even upped the use of bottled water, just got to the point where they were running 24/7 with these trucks. And the local people gathered together, all of the different local communities, and they actually blockaded the plant with stones and concrete blocks, and the trucks couldn't come and go. So to this day, Bonifant has not reopened that plant. They abandoned it, and the people have taken it back over again, and life is picking back up again. They've got water. These companies are, you know, they're into it for profit, and they don't really care that much about the local people and their own water rights. And it's just one more reason to me that we should be going with water filtration, water purification. The local water sources are not clean enough to use, so it's up to the individual to look for either a local water filtration plant or bottling plant, or just put in a system in your own house. The best countertop water filtration system actually is clearly filtered. I've done quite a lot of research on this in the past. Water pitchers are not at all the same, and in fact most of them do not give test results of what their filters actually filter out. Clearly Filtered is about the only one that shows the actual tests that they have run, and all the many things that get filtered out between harmful minerals, various herbicides, pharmaceuticals, pesticides, radiological elements, heavy metal, and PUFAs, which I don't know if you know what they are, but they're basically components that are given off by plastics, and that gets in our water. So clearly filtered countertop water pitchers actually are really excellent. They filter out arsenic. That's what I used when I first moved in here before I started using bottled water. And I was using the tap water here and with my clearly filtered pitcher, but once I saw how the tap water looked here, I realized that was asking a lot of the clearly filtered pitcher, and I was going to have to change the filters pretty often to keep up with this water here. So I decided to go ahead and get the Bonifant bottled water, and I actually then filter that with a clearly filtered pitcher, because I really don't know how good of a job Bonifant is doing. I don't really trust that they're filtering out all the things that should be filtered out. So that is the two-step process. The undersink is the next most expensive, but it's not really that bad. Usually you can get something for under $1,000. And again, Clearly Filtered has a really excellent undersink system, and you can order that from their website. I don't get any money from touting them. It's just that I've done enough research to know that this company has a huge amount of integrity, and they have a really, really outstanding system. I'm just saying they do ship internationally. If you're in Mexico, you will have to pay for the customs and the import and duties, whatever, you know, to get it into the country, and the shipping costs. Whole house systems are really quite expensive. Not necessarily prohibitive, but a lot of people can't afford it. So I would look around locally and ask them about their tests. I would look at what the Clearly Filtered website reports have, and you'll have a good idea of what you what really should be filtered out. In fact, if you were to take a test of your water to a lab locally and get it tested, you can find out exactly what's in your water. They can run different profiles on it and find out what the toxins potentially are in your area, and you can focus on filtering those things. Basically, there's two different systems. There's a reverse osmosis system, and then there's, which gets rid of contaminants, heavy metals, radiological, pharmaceuticals, etc. And then there's the UV systems, which actually kill microorganisms like amoebas, which we have in our water here. It's known. People have gotten sick from them. So microorganisms are killed by the UV. So you can't just go with one or the other. You can do with reverse osmosis, but you probably be at the back end, you want to do the UV. UV works best if you do it after the reverse osmosis, because it removes, you've already removed most of the particulates and it doesn't gunk up the system. But all systems need maintenance. So even the countertop pitcher, I change the filter. If you've got an under sink, you've got to stay on top of changing those filters. And the same with the reverse osmosis and with the UV filters. So all of them have filters and maintenance involved, and if you don't maintain it, you're potentially even putting things back into the water if the filters are so gunked up that they can't filter anymore, or it's just simply unable to do its job. So now I was going to talk a little bit about electricity. The electric company here is owned by the federal government. It's not a privately owned company, and that's true. It's for the entirety of Mexico. It's all run by the federal government, and it's called CFE, Federal Electricity Commission. 75% of the electricity is thermal energy using fuel oil, natural gas or diesel to generate steam and capture the energy as the heat as energy. Most of the rest of the electricity is from hydroelectric plants. Geothermal is the third, and since this has a lot of volcanic activity and there are geothermal areas, and so that actually is probably going to be increasing. The power poles in my area are all made of concrete. I don't know, I didn't notice as I was coming down if that's true for most of Mexico, but they're extremely durable. They don't rot and they don't splinter and they don't have any problem. They're pretty much there for decades. There's a lot of creativity in stringing the electric wires here in Mexico. I'm showing a picture here, and on those same poles we have, of course, all the cable and fiber optic lines all run on the same pole. So it gets to be quite a spaghetti of wires going from pole to pole and to the houses, and spare wires dangling. Paying your electric bill is critical. If you own a house and the electricity is in your name, it's pretty easy. You can pay it online, and electricity is paid every 2 months. The fact that I'm a renter and I'm in this house and the electricity is actually in the landlord's name. So I cannot pay online, and I'm required to pay every single month. So what I have to do, there's a little digital card that I go out and I hold that on the meter, and it shuts the electricity off for a minute and takes a reading, and then the electricity goes back on. Then I take the card in to the CFE office in the next town over. I have to drive there, and you put the card, there's like ATM machines at the office for the electric, and you put the card in the machine, and it's actually really easy. It reads what the meter had said, and then you can pay with credit card or cash or debit card. I mean, anything that you have, it works just fine in the machine, and there's always a guy there just really nice guy, there to help you figure out how to use the machine if you're having problems. Anyway, then I have to come back home with the card, hold it to the meter again, and then the meter registers that I paid and resets everything, so I'm good for another month. But 1 month I didn't, since I don't get a bill, I didn't know when it was due, and they shut the electricity off. And so, of course, my gate for my car is electric, and I couldn't get out the gate, so I had to have a neighbor drive me into the next town. I went into the office, and they got me, so I paid, and luckily it was able to remotely turn it all back on again, and when I got home I was able to activate it and get my electricity going. But it was lesson learned. You know, don't ever not pay your electric, because they mean it. When it's due, it is due, or they will shut you down. No grace period here. I'd like to point also that there is an abundance of sun here in Mexico, and a lot of people are switching completely over to solar. So they have both solar electricity and solar hot water. I think that's a really great option here. It makes things completely renewable energy and very abundant. So I think it's really wonderful that we're taking advantage of the fact that Mexico is such a wonderful sunny country, and we can create our own energy. The standard voltage here in Mexico is 127 volts and 60 hertz, whereas in the United States, it is 120 volts rather than 127 with 60 hertz. So plugs in the U.S. Do work in outlets in Mexico just fine. They won't blow up your appliances or anything, but I actually have found out that things like my hair dryer really aren't that happy with running 127 volts. I'm not sure that is the problem, but I think it is, and it shuts itself off. So I might end up getting a Mexican hair dryer soon. But don't be fooled in your house by type B outlets that look like they're grounded, because I would wager to guess almost no outlets in Mexico are grounded. Yeah, grounding is definitely the exception, not the rule. And in the kitchens and bathrooms, GFCI is not an existing thing. This house is not that old. There's no GFCI, no grounding. Just be careful when you're using electricity in the bathroom or the kitchen, not to be near any water or have water running or anything like that, because there's no safety net for you there. I brought quite a lot of stereo equipment with me, and I was so excited to have my stereo set up, and I got it all set up, and I started playing, and oh my God, it's not grounded. And so you get this really loud hum. And if I decide I'm going to stay in this house, I will just go ahead and pay an electrician to come here and ground the electricity in this house, because I miss having music. And I don't know, I may buy a battery operated boombox or something just to get me by. And I do stream music on my headset, but it's just nice to have music in the house. And I can't do that with my stereo. And I dragged it all the way down here from the US, and it's just sitting there gathering dust. I can't use it. So bare light bulbs are not uncommon even in very nice houses. I don't know quite why. They just wire them and put the socket in, and no light fixture. So luckily this house does have light fixtures, but I stayed in an Airbnb that was a really, really nice house. And there was just bare light bulbs hanging by a wire all over that house. And I was like very surprised that seems to be kind of par. Well, electricity is actually very cheap here also. So in comparison to gas, I actually use a little induction cooktop that I brought down with me with all of my pots and pans that work with it. And I do have a gas range here, but I don't use it that much. After having emptied out the gas tank once and found out that how expensive it was to fill, I realized that just using electricity to do my stovetop cooking works better. So I just use my little induction cooktop. Would definitely consider putting in an induction cooktop rather than putting in a range or a gas cooktop. It's so much more efficient, and it's much cheaper. So my electricity in this house, and it's a 3-bedroom, 2-bath, but again, there's only me, and I'm pretty frugal in my electric use, but it runs about $10 a month. So $10 a month, I can deal with that. Between 10 for the water, 10 for the electricity, that's pretty good to go in that. But anyway, that's about it. I hope you have a wonderful week, and I will post again when I get the next program ready to go. Have a lovely time. I hope to see you next time, and don't forget to do all the usual things. You know the drill. Thumbs up, like it, comment, ask questions, share it with your friends, and please do subscribe. Take care. See you next time. Bye-bye.